Hi, it's Mark from the Digging Deep podcast. Just a quick one before we get started. Over the past few weeks, we've had more than 15,000 views and listens across the podcast, which is brilliant. So first of all, thank you. But what we are seeing is that a lot of people are watching and listening and not subscribing. So if you are enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to subscribe, whether that's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a big difference and helps us keep growing, bringing in great guests and improving the show each week. Also, give us a follow on social to keep up with everything we've got going on. Right, let's get on with this week's episode.
Marty, all right?
Yeah, all good, you?
Yeah, good. Been another blinding spell of weather. Could do with some rain. Typical English, got to dig out that Peter Kay track, well, when he's moaning about, oh, it's too hot. We're British, aren't we? We moan that it's that we want the sun, but when it comes, we moan that we don't want it. We're just not used to it. It's really being warm. I feel sorry for all the animals out there trying to, but that gets me straight into a couple of things, First, number one, what's done me head in this week is the amount of dog owners I've seen out with their dogs. Yeah, in this weather, like keep them in for Christ's sake. People think they've got to take them out, but they don't. That's the first thing. But before I get into my main what's burning your head in, that's my minor moan of the week. What's been doing yours, Mark?
Well, do you know what mine is, right? I took a few days off with Sarah. We went down to the coast, the Kent coast, went to Deal for a few days. But what does my head in is that they want people to come to the coast, spend their money in the UK, because everyone keeps running off to Spain and everything else, right? But they don't make it easy. I get down there, we're staying in like a thing I booked on booking.com. We get down there and it says max stay 3 hours, no return for 1 hour. So I've got right, so we do the 3 hours. And then I've got to move the car to another car park. Max stay 3 hours, no return, 1 hour. I thought, are you joking, right? And then it was from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. It was free. So I've had to set my alarm for 7:45 in the morning. Bear in mind I'm on holiday. I'm supposed to be having a rest. I got to sort the car out. But I can't put a ticket on it because I was there at the last session, which was up to 6 p.m. So I've got to go. So I've got to move the car to another location. So the idea we chose with Deal, because it's got an old high street, some quirky places to visit. It's got the car sorted, adventure golf, but I couldn't do any of that because by the time you walk to one of them places and do it, you might be longer than, and I've got to get back. So I can only be an hour and a half from any, because I've got to get an hour and a half back. But when we left, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't wait to go home.
You're a miserable fucker. I'll tell you what's done my head in as well this week is what I can't get my head round is restaurants nowadays. I've noticed, maybe it's been COVID, I don't know. First of all, I saw the slide with lack of people. Now I'm seeing the lack of expertise and the amount of kids that run these restaurants now or that are in management roles. And I mean, yesterday, so it clearly said on this menu, half a risotto, whatever you call it, chicken, yeah? Half a chicken, basically, on the spit, and it clearly said, I want to say half. And I pulled a girl over and I said to her, I'm not being funny, it does actually say on the menu half, but there's no way there's half. You've cut the breast off. She gave me a bit of a leg and a thigh and a little bit of knobbly leg part of a wing and no breast. So how is that half a chicken? And then she's gone, oh, I'll go and talk to the chef. So she came back and she said, well, what we'll do is we'll do you an extra little bit of breast, yeah? So you've got a bit extra. So you'll have a bit extra. I'm like, hold on a minute. It's not a bit extra. It's what I've paid for. It's just unbelievable. You're not getting what you paid. And then the week before, I can't believe it. And I promised the guy, because he has replied to me on social media, it's a famous chef restaurant, and he wanted 30 quid for a roast dinner. Yeah, and this is like TV chef, all right, 30 quid. You think, all right, it's a bit toppy for a roast dinner, but you know, you are where you are, let's say, where you think you're going to get. And everything else was meant to be organic. So the first thing I thought I'd have, I wasn't drinking, I was driving, so I had this like raspberry and water organic lemonade, it was called. Sorry, raspberry and lemonade organic thing. Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, it had more fucking sugar in it when I see it than your daily intake. And this £30 offering came out with a plate that was probably no bigger than your normal tea plate, and the Yorkshire pudding was not cooked. It was raw, and yeah. And I'm like, I'm saying to the bloke who's a kid running the, and I mean that in respect. I mean, they're no more than 20 something years old, and he's trying to tell me that, well, that's the way they do their Yorkshires. Not really sorry that it's shit, but they're trying to defend on the back foot. And where did customer service change where the customer was always right to the customer is a complete arsehole and we've got to back him off as much as we can? And it's like, it's just really done my head in. It's not cheap to eat out anymore, is it? It is not cheap, you know, and you go in there expecting a level of decency. If you're paying higher amount as well, you expect a level of decent food. You expect a chef, like in a top restaurant, or supposedly backed by a top chef. You expect that, you know. I mean, I moaned the other day. People laughed at me on social media because I put that when I was in that one of the Gordon Ramsay restaurants, and I don't mind mentioning him because, you know, I just think it was nothing wrong with the food. The food was fantastic, but they served me a gin and tonic in a shit glass. And I think it matters when you're paying for something that you have the right glass. I don't know, that's me. I'm a bit funny. No, if I'm having a gin and tonic, I want in a big tumbler glass, don't I? If I'm having a red wine, I'm having a nice big glass, you know, and a smaller glass for the wine.
That's it.
Now, you know, and the guy tells me and he says, because I think we just turned up for lunch, so we weren't on the lash. And I think we just bought, there was 4 of us, and we just bought, there was a menu. You couldn't believe the thickness of the menu on the wine. Yeah, you'd have had to been a wine connoisseur, and you would have had to have spent a week looking through the wine list to find out what you really wanted to try. So I just said to him, well, look, you know, let's just give us a bottle of the house. You know, he said there's a Merlot as a house, so just give us a bottle of that. That'd be fine. We're here for lunch, for Christ's sake. So he comes along, and I said, look, can't you give us a decent, you know, for the wine? So he said, well, you know, if you'd bought if you'd bought a more expensive glass of wine. So I said to him, so basically, if we're poor, I can't afford your wine, you're going to give us a shit glass. Is that what he's saying to me? What is going on with the world? Is it? And I sound like me granddad, you know, like I'm a miserable fucker. But I'm refusing it's because I've got older. I just think that the standards have just dropped massively, absolutely massively. And you're right with what you're saying. They moan about the economy. They moan about people wanting to go and spend money in the shops and going to places where you'll want to go and spend a day and spend money in the UK. But they make it so difficult for you to do that. You can't park. You can't fucking, you know, it's 90 quid to get on the train.
It is, yeah. It is. You're right though. Do you know what happened to the other? Well, look, this is another one, right? Talking about that. Leah's birthday, she wanted to go to the Paradox Museum, which is at Knightsbridge, right? Gets in a Victoria, right? Victoria line up to Green Park. Change from the Victoria line to the Piccadilly line. Guess what? Done all that walk in the tunnels underneath, and there's a geezer in the back in the far distance, right? And I'm thinking, what's that all about? And they pulled the shutter across. I said, Piccadilly line, mate. He went, yeah, it's closed, mate. If you go all the way back where you just come from. Right?
I bet that.
Honestly, if you go to the top,
Yeah.
get yourself the 9 bus over and that go into Knightsbridge. Are you joking me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the question, I just paid for the ticket. You know the ticket that you get the tubes with it? I've just bought 4 of them. Me and the 3 others. Bought 4 day tickets and I can't even use one half of my journey.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Well, why don't they tell you before you walk down the bloody passage?
yeah.
How hard is it? Sorry, you'll make an announcement. The Piccadilly line's shut.
There was nothing to tell me that, honestly, until I got there and the guy was sitting there, and I thought, what? And you know how hot it's been. We walked. We ended up walking because they didn't want to. There was, you could imagine, a queue for the bus, so they didn't want to wait in the queue. So we walked through Green Park out the other side into night. Mate, we done miles that day just because that was down.
We have one lock-up on the tube line. Normally we're quite good, to be fair, on them. But we have one lock-up, it's locked up. But look, today, Mark, I was thinking, what could we talk about today? I was thinking, we called it like the 1 million fleet mistake. And coming on from last week, when we talked about obsolete, it really got me juices flowing, like fleet being outdated because of technology. Well, then there's another factor is what we like to talk about is, are we buying too early or too late? So now that we've got our frustrations out, I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode, Digging Deep. Just like to say, thanks for subscribing. The amount of subscribers we're getting at the moment is really good, healthy, but we could do with more. People are listening. There's people listening but not subscribing. Just press that little bell. Press that subscribe button. It means you won't miss nothing of me and Mark talking absolute shite on a weekly basis. So today's topic, I thought, would be one that would quietly cost the construction industry millions of pounds every year, yet very few people openly discuss it. When is the right time to replace construction equipment? Replace too early and you throw away years of productive life. Replace too late and you're left with unreliable machines, falling residual values, and customers who simply don't want yesterday's technology. Is there really a perfect replacement point? Or are we just making educated guesses? Which, to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of that. Joining me today, obviously, is Mark again, where we'd like to say that Charlie is, I think he's been kidnapped. So we put one of those APUs or whatever. What's that on the crime watch things when they send the old bill out. Look at you.
What, the international warrant or whatever it is?
Yeah. So if you see him anywhere in Ibiza or any other haunts that 30-something people go to, Magaluf, then tell him to stop drinking and come home.
There's a rumor out. I just want to clear this up. There's a rumor out. It's just out there that he's in Peru. He's gone to Peru. I'm just saying the rumor's out. That's what it is.
Maybe he actually went and had knocked on the door of that haunted house that he was going on.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he's disappeared. That's what it is. It's either a haunted house or he is actually in Peru. I don't know. By the next pod, we'll probably find out he's crossed the border to Chile or something.
Well, look, hopefully he's catching some of the World Cup. But look, today, obviously, you've spent a lot of years advising businesses on fleet investment. You've been involved in fleets, different sizes, different big hire companies on big fleets. You're still doing that today. What's your thoughts on what we're going to talk about today, Mark? Any information?
It's the really big question, Mark, and it's a really great question because you know what, the time that you buy equipment and the time you sell it, of course, as well, is everything, because you've got to think about utilization. Are you buying it at a point when you're about to utilize it immediately, or are you buying it because you need it in a few months' time? You've got downtime, maintenance, fuel, residual values, customer demands. There's loads of reasons why you might need to buy, but it's really important that you buy at the right time.
Absolutely. So when people hear that fleet replacement, they usually think depreciation, don't they?
Yeah.
I think it's a much bigger than accounting. I think this is about business strategy, really. And everyone thinks, well, if it's underutilized, get rid of it. Overutilized, make sure you get rid of it within a certain period of time. But what actually makes replacing equipment too early such an expensive mistake, do you think?
I think, look, you got to look at your commercial fleet utilisation. I mean, average average commercial fleet utilisation typically sits around 55 to 70%, meaning 30 to 45% is sitting idle. And you often see that in plant yards. You go to a plant yard, there's always a load of stuff somewhere at the back, isn't there?
Yeah.
You got to think about the best in class operators can achieve a better utilisation by having the right people. They're in the actual operators in demand with a machine, of course. So planning, visibility, these are all factors you need to think about. I mean, look, if you've got a £20 million fleet and 30% of it isn't earning you any money, you've effectively got 6 million of capital sitting there earning you nothing.
Yeah, and I think people don't realise that. I think there's a lot more to talk about now. When we said last week about if you were going to start again, and invest in the fleet, what would you buy? It's a real difficult question. Whereas before, 10 years ago, it was quite straightforward, wasn't it? It was about what equipment's going to give me the best residual value and who's the best rep out there that I can get to get the machines out and the best people to drive it. But now there's so many more things to think about, technology-wise, what you're buying, who you're buying from, why you're buying, what's the residual as well. But look, let's start with the replacing the equipment too early. Manufacturers launch new models, salespeople promise fuel savings, technology improves. But are businesses replacing machines because they generally need to, or because they're being convinced that they should? That's the question that I've got.
Yeah, I mean, look, large construction fleets that are actively trying to reduce their idle fleet. They're reporting 20% lower fuel consumption because they're missing the idle stuff, and that's a big thing as well. Is factoring in the savings. If you've got plant sitting there doing nothing, you've got to move it on, haven't you? It's costing you money, and the fuel. If you've got older units, the fuel that it consumes could be far greater as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, are we saying that should businesses ever replace equipment simply because newer technology exists? Though that's what we were talking about last week. Should they?
Yeah, look, I think buying too early could mean you haven't earned the money you need to earn out of your existing fleet. That's the risk. It largely depends on your business model. We've seen this. Some people have a business model where they buy a machine, they run it for 6 months, then they move it on, and they're already buying the next lot of machines. That's their business model. Their business model is selling almost new equipment with 500 hours on it. But then someone else who's got a slightly different business model, they might need to run that machine for 3 years. So if you're buying early and you're shifting your older machines on early, you haven't earned what you need to earn out of them yet.
No, you haven't sweat the assets, as they used to say, isn't it? And maybe price fluctuation should go depending on maybe like if you got a Dash 2 and the new one's a Dash 3 that's come out because it's got a new bell and whistle, maybe you need to be charging slightly less or charge slightly more with the new technology. But I don't know if the industry would accept that. That's the only thing. But do we think that, on your own side, having worked with some modern fleets, really, do you think, a couple of questions, how much influence do you think manufacturers really have over replacement decisions? Do you think it's driven by having the latest bell and whistle?
Yeah, I think that manufacturers do a good job at innovating and getting the stuff on the machines. Then, of course, they let the market know about it. And if it's the right kind of attractive innovation, you've then got customers saying to the likes of me, say a hire company, they're then saying, oh, I reckon I could do with a machine with that on it or this on it. So I think manufacturers do a good job, but they don't necessarily innovate internally. They rely on, you look at the external customers, like, you know, the HFR systems and everything else, they're having to sell to the manufacturers. It feels like they've got to beat the manufacturer's door down. Are the manufacturers, it should be the other way around. The manufacturers should be proactively looking at the gadgets, gizmos and innovations and saying, should we put that on our machine? That would be a great selling point. But they don't, do they? It's backward.
Yeah, it's totally backward. And I think sometimes we are becoming obsessed with having the newest and latest equipment. And you think to yourself, well, is it generally being pushed for? Do you lose hires because, or is it an excuse, do you think, where so-and-so's got something with a bell and a whistle on it, but you haven't? But it's the same machine, it does the same job, but you've got a little bit more technology on it to make it a little bit easier for the operator or whatever. I'm not sure that we're not a little bit vain ourselves, perhaps. That could be the case. I don't know what you feel on that particular side.
Yeah, I think, look, it largely depends what the value is to each individual person or client. So if you've got all the bells and whistles on this machine, if I'm just a landscape gardener, what the hell do I need all that for? But if I'm a tier one contractor and I've got, I don't know, Highways England visiting me every other day, and I need to show that I'm doing things safe and secure, and I've got, you know, really tight risk assessment and method statements, perhaps slew restrictors and all the other bells and whistles and HFR and thumbs up and maybe all these things, by having that on my site and in my RAMs, I can demonstrate that I'm doing a great job. So
Yeah.
I think it depends what the value is to the client.
Yeah, I remember this, and our guest that we had on the other week, Liam Moore, backed me up on this, you know, and we'll have him on again in a few weeks, because we might be doing something different with Liam perhaps in the future, but he'll back me up on this. I remember a particular person who came and asked a little bit of advice, and he said, well, we're going to create a company, a hire company, and it's going to have everything on our machine. But people are going to pay a premium because it's got everything on there. It's going to have absolutely everything. So instead, at the time, I think it was around about £650 for a 20-ton excavator a week, they're going to pay $850. And I said, well, what happens if you don't want one of those? Because you're going basically based on a particular group of customers that insist on a specification, like the Highways England spec, for example. What happens if you get a phone, you got a yard full of kit, and the guy wants to just a standard 20-ton? I'm telling you now, if it's sat in a fucking yard, you're going to put it out, and you're going to put it out at $650, but you're paying £850 worth of finance arrangement, if you know what I mean. You're paying a premium because you've loaded the machine up. And I'm not too sure that you actually get the value back on all those items as much as people think they do. But that's a different an argument, which, you know, when you go to sell it, which is what brings me on to the next part, you know, are we keeping equipment too long? It gets me to that point where you think, well, I'm going to go and sell my machine. The guy that goes to the auction or wherever he's buying a machine for, he's in his head, he's thinking, well, I know what the machine's worth. This 20-ton Hitachi is worth 120 grand, for example. But on your books, it's 135 because you've loaded it right up. Will you get that extra £15,000 as part of your machine? I'm not sure. But let's look at the opposite here. Are we keeping it too long? Many businesses pride themselves on squeezing every last hour from the asset. But when does it sensibly become expensive?
This is the thing, you know, at the end of the day, when you've got an asset, an aging asset, you've got to then factor in the fact that you've got, you know, increasing repair costs, you've got downtime, the repairs and the downtime is lost revenue, the reliability's gone, so you're hiring someone out wondering if it's going to break down because you kept it too long. The fuel efficiency, as we've said earlier in this pod, the fuel efficiency compared with new machines is down. The safety systems may be partly existent or even non-existent because the new stuff's coming out. And of course, is it compliant? Because of course, to be in London, you've got to have tier 5. So if you've got old machines that you've kept for a long time, could be tier 4, tier 3. So there's a lot of stuff that you've got to factor in if you've got machines that are now like aging, getting old.
Yeah. So when do we think then a productive asset becomes a liability then? You know, is it just down to the... Yeah, because again, we're talking about if it was electric or diesel, it's going to be completely different, isn't it? Can an older machine actually cost more than buying a new one? I don't know. Because the model in the US used to be keep the machine for as long as you could, and then at the end of the 5 to 6 years, they might refurb that. They might spend 30 or 40 grand on that machine. And I know contractors in the US that used to do that. And that was a big thing. I know rental's going in there a little bit more now. And perhaps rental is growing in other parts of the world because of the things we're talking about, because of the technology changes so quickly. And your argument at the end of last week, which was you should rent your machine now because of them changes happening so quickly. But the old model in the US used to be, you know, I'm going to spend 30 or 40 grand. I'm going to have a new undercarriage, some new tracks and everything else. I'm going to spend some serious money on that because I'm going to get another 5 years out of my base machine. Because at the end of the day, I'm only digging, perhaps, or crushing. So do you think that businesses underestimate the hidden cost of the downtime in breakdown, or do you think that we've just got a flawed model, do you reckon?
I think
how to sell it.
I think it's, look, if you can, I think it largely depends on the skill set you've got there as well, because if you've got the capacity, if you know that it needs new steel tracks and you can put those steel tracks on and it goes out and it works, that's great. If you're doing all the necessary preventative maintenance to keep that unit going, and if the guy comes to you and says, oh, it needs a new fuel pump, you've got the capacity, your guy is well within his skill set to replace that fuel pump and all the rest of it. If you've got that, you could potentially, you've got half a chance of keeping the machine going. But you've still got the unknown, haven't you? Even if you do all the preventative maintenance in the world, you could still have, I don't know, the piston's gone, the conrod's gone, the injectors are blocked. You know, there's all this shit that you can't see on a preventative maintenance plan. And it's big money as well, isn't it? When the engine starts going, it starts to get big money.
It does. But the debate is that we're traditionally locked in because, how do I explain this before? It's quite strange. We had a different model in the UK until someone said, let's do hire. And the OEM said, wow, if you're going to do hire, then you're more efficient because of the changes of technology to replace your machine in every 3 years. And that could be a myth, couldn't it? It could be an absolute myth because these machines don't last 3 years and then fall apart, do they? They go to other part of the world, and a lot of the maintenance in these machines that have been done over that 3 year period from new haven't been fantastic. You know, it's been okay. Some companies better than others, but you don't really know how well that machine's been maintained properly. There might be some records, perhaps there's not. You know, but you know, the Africans are then running them, and the Indians and everyone else are then running that 3 year old machine for another 10 years. Is it? Do you think it's a bit more like I don't know. Someone sold us this. This is the way that we should run our equipment. That's what I'm thinking. Because now we're saying that 20 years ago we bought the steel, today we're buying the software. How much has technology changed the fleet replacement process? But to me, it's a little bit, is it mythical, a bit like the diamond industry, where up until about 1920, when they had worked out that diamonds were worth nothing and they had too many of them, someone decided, let's change the engagement ring, which if you go way back, the engagement ring was just a band of silver or gold. But someone said, let's whack a diamond on it. It makes you look really luxurious. And then everyone now buys an engagement ring with a diamond. Even though there's more diamonds in the world than anything, and you think they're the most valuable things in the world. But when you but you don't realise how many there are. So technically, they're probably worth nothing apart from an inflated value. Is that not the same what the manufacturers have told us, how we should maintain a machine, how we should do this, how we should do that? I don't know. I'm a bit distrusting of it, perhaps.
I think it's because there's new elements now. Years ago, when you bought a machine, That's what it was. It was to dig holes, and that's all it was. That's what it was for. I think the challenge now is that you've got, telematics, and you've got telematics from just basic data to advanced data. Yeah, you've got AI diagnostics, remote monitoring, machine software, connected fleets, the emissions legislations that we've now got to comply for, now the new electric excavators coming in. So the reality is we've actually got a lot more to consider. We're not just buying a machine that digs a hole. We could potentially, like you said earlier, we could potentially have a machine that's fully loaded with, GPS, safety systems, all sorts of stuff. So I think it's really merged the waters a little bit in what we need and how we buy and how we sell.
But then surely, right, the argument is, because we're saying that the OEMs are shortening the replacement cycles because of the technology changes quickly. We said that last week. So surely they should last longer, the machines now, because the telematics on them and everything else, all the other technology, is helping you be more accurate with what you're doing. And there should be less maintenance on the machine or major repairs because the telematics is picking up the fact that there's a possibility that thing's getting a bit too hot and you might need to look at it. So you're doing a lot more pre-diagnostics, if you like. So shouldn't the argument be that it's strengthening the lifespan of the machine?
You make a really good point, Mark. And in theory, on paper, what you said is completely true. The reality is I don't think as an industry, it's a bit like last week's talk on telematics. I don't think as an industry we've fully embraced the technology, though. People are asking for it. Oh, I'll have this with GPS on it. But are they, or some other technology, but are they actually embracing it? Are they using it to make the life of their machines longer by making it more efficient? So instead of digging, I don't know, 1 million holes in its life, it's only dug 500,000, right? So, but we're not, are we? We're having GPS because the rep said that I could do this with it, or we're having this other system because it's supposed to stop the arms swinging onto the carriageway. I don't think we've, as an industry, fully appreciated what technology can do for us, and more importantly, adopted it in the best ways.
No, I agree. I agree with that. What do we think the perfect fleet looks like now? I mean, I don't know how we're going to go through this. I don't know if it's about models or what, but let's imagine we're starting from scratch, because we said this, before. If we were going to start from scratch, how could we? We had an unlimited budget and a blank sheet of paper. How would we build the ideal fleet today, and how would we use the same strategy to turn that round? Turn it round as in the same lifespell. Is it easier or harder, do you think, to start from scratch?
I think it's harder to start from scratch now because of the legislation, the compliance. We've said this before when we did with a pod on the ISOs and all the accreditations that are there. And the other thing is as well is years ago when I started out, everything was diesel. Small tools were electric, main plant was diesel. But now you've got diesel, electric. We've been talking about hydrogen. Residual values are important. What's your business model? AI is coming in. What's the future legislation? How does that affect what you might buy? And then, of course, you got the ownership versus rental model. So that is a really, really hard question to answer. And I think you'd have to have a long look at what your business is, what the strategy is, and how you're going to deliver that strategy. And is it with AI? Is it with electric? Is it with hydrogen, diesel? So put it this way, I wouldn't want to be starting out right now because I think we're on the cusp of some big change in fuels.
I think that then builds on to the finance side. When you think about it, you know, having worked in contract rental and having to go round to cut old school guys, especially in the waste industry, and say to them, look, you should rent this because of this and that, and they go, oh, well, I've always bought. My model's have been always to buy. But surely now, especially with your argument about rental from last week, was surely should I buy and be stuck with that technology, or should I do a lease agreement in the way that I purchase my machine, if you like, because I'm more likely to get the residual back after that lease. I'm more protected. You with me than if I bought the machine outright or did HP and I'm left with, I've paid my $100,000 and I'm left with what I'm left with at the end of it. Whereas with a lease, I maybe got more flexibility to get out of that lease, to roll that lease over. So it's becoming more of a rental to rent business rather than an own to rent. Do you get what I mean? Because you're just really the ownership and the bullshit is down to the finance company will get that residual value right based on their experience, or leave it all down to them. So maybe we'll see more people leasing machines. And it'd be interesting to find someone. Actually, we'll get a guest on with regards to finance and how that's changing in the industry, because I think that is another factor, isn't it, that we haven't taken into consideration with the changes that are happening. But look, let's go back and now. I always put you under pressure now on these quick fire round questions, and we can both answer them. But what's the biggest fleet mistake you've ever seen?
I've seen someone buy a fleet of excavators that weren't first in class and failed to perform. And of course, they were on the fleet for 3 years. They failed to perform and were very troublesome for 3 years. And then the dealer went bust.
Yeah, God, how many times I've seen that? Yeah, bloody hell. But yeah, I don't know. I think the biggest mistakes. There's been loads of mistakes with buying equipment. I think sometimes buying equipment too early in the cycle can be the big mistake. Like we've seen the technology. We haven't always got that. We haven't been afforded the time to look sometimes because it moves so quickly. But I'd like to have seen other people bed in electric machines and hydrogen machines before we ever bought them. Do you get what I mean? So they've tried and tested in the industry, see where it's going. But yeah. What's the most overrated technology then? We're talking about technology. It's the most
overrated.
Yeah.
I'm trying to the most overrated technology that I think just because it was early doors is do you remember the tags, the IP tags that go in your hat or your vest?
Oh yeah.
Because the trouble is, if Joe Public or someone isn't wearing them, they don't go off. They only go off if you're wearing them. So it was a great idea and a great innovation, but I think it was overrated in the sense that it relied on IP tags.
But the other part of that overrated safety data was that the guy was so used to, people thought they were safer. So as they walked into the zone, either the truck driver or the excavator driver would get this red light or a buzzer flashing up, someone's in your area, and they would be so used to it, they would just switch off. So eventually you just run someone over.
Yeah.
Because you don't, the old where we used to say what the thumbs up was, it wasn't about thumbs up, we love safety, by the way. It was about thumbs up from the operator that you could actually see that he's noticed you. So you were able to come up and approach him. That was the bit that I always thought. But now we've done overrated. What's the most underrated technology or machine on the market, do you think, seen?
I actually think the most underrated, because I think people don't have a real idea of how powerful it could be. the most underrated tech, I think, is some of that stuff that Mike James has got going on. You can't believe the data and the information on that machine control. It is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. No, I agree. It took a long time to get into the industry. I think they knew a lot more about it, and I think they've got the right type of salespeople now. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about who's doing innovation then the best. What manufacturer? I've got a few bits. I know you normally have some stats on things like this, but
Yeah, I'm not sure who's. I'll have to have a look at that. Actually,
I've,
into that. Let me have a little look
well,
on my
I've got a
sheet.
couple of
Hold on.
bits. I've got like let's pick out some of the big ones. Like Cat. You know, they've got like their new. You talked about telematics and stuff like that. Cat Vision Link. They've got extensive autonomous mining equipment. So they've got, believe it or not, Cat have got over 700 autonomous trucks operating globally already. So what does that tell us? They've got real strong predictive maintenance capabilities in AI now. So they can see the trends really quickly. Then you move on. If you're talking about electrification, believe it or not, one of the big leaders, and we talked about the Chinese, is actually Volvo. So they're one of the first major OEMs to commit seriously to electric compact equipment. And they've got a real good range now of electric. If you call that an innovation, there's an argument, isn't there? But they've got some good wheeled X loaders. I mean, so have Sany and so have some others. Is Volvo, the question there is Volvo generally ahead, or are customers simply not ready yet with that electrification because they're still struggling? I think you've got Komatsu that have always had their intelligent machine control. So that's part of their, instead of fitting the Leicas and the Topcons of this world, they're doing it right. They might be in the background a Leica product or a different manufacturer's product backing Komatsu, but they're fitting it from source now. And they've got some serious autonomous haulage systems going at the moment. It seems a lot more autonomous machines are trucks, dump trucks and stuff like that, which means that perhaps the next move will be autonomous dumpers. But I'd like to see that on a small construction site. But yeah, I mean, Sany, we talked about that. We'll have to mention one of the Chinese. I went over and I saw some of their battery technology was phenomenal. We had on a loading shovel, which I think electric will come out really well on rather than excavators. We've asked about excavators, hybrid excavators, why they worked, why they didn't work. If we go back to Komatsu's days, I think they made a mistake by doing a 20-tonner rather than a 30-tonner. But it was all based around the slew of the machine, so very good at loading. So as the machine slewed, it would then recharge compared to when they were digging. It was difficult. Whereas these machines have still got that problem. Electric machines, electric excavators. However, the loading shovels haven't. They work well. And we had, when we was over in the Sany factory a few years ago, we had a couple of English operators go over there and test the machines, and they worked for 5 hours. They had their lunch, charged the machine, and worked for another 5 hours. And now they're building like, can you imagine like a gantry where you drive the machine underneath, and the crane comes down, unplugs and unclicks the battery, and puts a new set of charged batteries in,
Wow.
and off the machine goes. So I think that was quite good.
The tech.
And like you've got people like Hitachi and all that who've got really good remote fleet monitoring. Again, really good predictive maintenance. So yeah, a lot of people there, manufacturers stepping up. So I don't know if there's a leading innovator. Do you think? But next question is a bit more than a one. Sorry, everyone, that was a bit more than of a one sentence answer from me. What do you think the biggest challenge is facing the renting business now?
What's the biggest challenge facing the rental business now? I think it's the pace of change. Like like when we had cars, we had petrol, diesel phased in, then we had diesel injection, then we had turbo diesels. There was a relatively, in the car industry at the time, there's a relatively nice pace of change. I think the pace of change that we've got at the moment, as you've described with all the innovations and the manufacturers you've seen, the pace of change is too much, in the sense that we've got electric coming in, or is it hydrogen, or is it both, right? And then then we've got small machines. Now we've got big machines. Now big machines can be electric, where it was just small before, And it's like,
Well,
and I think
Balmer had that 700 ton. I don't know if you saw it. 100-ton Komatsu mining machine, fully electric.
wow.
Yeah, fully electric.
So how do you? Do you agree that I think the biggest challenge facing the rental industry are the decisions around the pace of change at the moment? What the hell do you buy?
Well, this is why I'm going to have to push us again, both of us, because I'm going to finish with that one question. Because we started off with like £1 million mistake. Imagine I'm going to hand you a check now for 100 million. You have to build the perfect construction fleet, and you can buy whatever you want. You can buy diesel, electric, hydrogen, any manufacturer, any technology, but there's one condition. You must own that fleet for the next 10 years, and every penny of profit or loss comes out of your own pocket. What does that fleet look like, and why? And I'd like to hear from the listeners. Now we're getting all these subscribers. Maybe they can comment and say, what does that fleet look like, Mark? What do you think? You've got 100 million. What are we buying?
I think you'd have to buy a mix. You'd have to buy some diesel because you've got the here and now. I think you'd have to buy electric because that is where it seems like it's going with the legislation and the stuff like that. And I think you'd have to buy hydrogen because that's also coming in as well. I think you'd have to have a mix. What the percentages look like, as in 50, 25, 25, I don't know. But you'd have to get
would you
a
want
mix.
to back electric and hydrogen?
Electric, diesel.
Would you want to back both of those? I mean, this is where you're coming into, because let's get into some data. If you said to me tomorrow, what are you going to buy? I'm buying 75% diesel. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm probably then topping up with electric, and maybe I don't know. Am I buying a hydrogen machine if it's coming out of my pocket? I don't know. You've got your point of view.
My opinion is, I think for now it's diesel topped up with a little bit of electric. Hydrogen is so brand new, that's the trouble. It's so brand new. And where do you fill it up? Because it's so expensive as well.
Yeah. Expensive and maybe not safe as it should be. Perhaps. I know they've got ways of filling stuff up now. ACB have invented a special truck, haven't they, that you can drive around and fill it up. But God, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, 100 million. I'm probably betting still on diesel at the moment. But that's my own personal view. I'd like to hear the views of others. But let's close off today. And I think today's discussion proves that the biggest fleet mistakes aren't made in the workshop anymore. That's fair to say. Yeah, they're made in the boardroom. Knowing what to buy is important. Knowing when to buy it may be even more important. Fleet strategy is no longer just about depreciation, which is fair to say. I think we've just spoken about that. It's about technology, cash flow, customer demand, legislation, now data, and making decisions today that will make financial sense 10 years from now. So thanks from, again, Mark, today. And
thanks a lot, mate.
If you've enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review.
Like and subscribe.
Give us some comments about the subject. A few of you are now. It'd be good to read them out next time. And thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks very much.
The opinions expressed within this podcast are solely the individuals and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the sponsors or its affiliates.